I'm Julianne Puente, head of school at Albuquerque Academy in New Mexico. The Academy is a leader in the world of independent schools. We honor our past while embracing the future of education. Even though I've been going to school in one shape or form for almost my entire life, I still learn something new every day, and I use that knowledge to tackle the challenges that should interest anyone who has a stake in the future we can't fully imagine. Thanks for joining me to hear about what I learned in school. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us as we continue celebrating Albuquerque Academy's 70th anniversary. I'm Julianne Puente, and today we're taking a closer look at the extraordinary legacy of the Sims family, whose vision and generosity helped shape the Academy into what it is today. Our guest is Francie Lee, Academy alum from the class of 1988 and a member of the Sims family. Her family's connection to the school spans generations. Her uncle Albert was the first of the Sims family to enroll at the Academy, and gifts of land and financial support from her great-uncle Albert and his wife Ruth McCormick Sims established the very foundation of our campus. Francie, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here representing the Sims family and the alumni.
I love it. And, you have been at every graduation that I have had the good fortune to, present the diplomas. And in the past years, we've had an opportunity to share some meals together and to connect. What are some ways that you feel the Academy has changed, really, since you were here as a graduate in '88, to today?
Sure. I think one of the greatest things that I can say is the continuity hasn't changed. And looking at graduation ceremony after ceremony, the honoring of the alumni and distinguished people in the community, everybody has a true love for this school. And just absolutely, it spans the generations. And I think that that's a true testament to what this school started out to be and is continuing to be. But as far as changes go, I think that technology and what the world is globally right now, the Academy has embraced that. And I've watched my niece, who's a recent graduate from the Academy a couple years ago, go through COVID and what that meant to the changing landscape of the school. But really, truly, I think that the best change is not a whole lot of change.
Right. And talking to other alums from the 80s and then looking, and some of them work here now, the idea that, women are more prominent, I would just say, in this, and that has changed the flavor. And talking to Don Smith and to Andy Watson, these are changes they really embraced and wanted for this school. I know that you're not here on the day to day, but what was it like, when you were, a student here, and maybe just from looking through your niece's lens, how might that have been a different experience if you had been here now?
Sure. I have the great honor, privilege, I don't know what you would really want to call it, of coming here my freshman year. And that was the first year that girls were actually allowed in the middle school. So that was all the way back in '84. And looking at what that started, letting girls be members of the Academy starting in 6th grade and going all the way through, that was kind of a big landmark. I think 1977 was the first year that girls were allowed in the high school in campus altogether. But watching how it changed and the acceptance of the girls in the middle school, and seeing how that was moving forward. I think it's a great thing. And you coming in, like you said, talking with Andy Watson and Smitty, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It is such a great thing. And I think that the most important part of your leadership and women in the schools, women in general, is that we're all sharing a love for education and we're wanting to do right for the children. That's the most important part of all of it.
You know, during alumni weekend, I had a graduate from the 60s come to me and he said, "This used to be the Academy for boys." And I said, "You must be really disappointed now." Like, I didn't even really know what
do you say?
You know, and well, you know, I actually do think it is, it's nice to reflect on how having different people from all, it could be from gender, politics, name it, that how it enriches an experience the same way that having, you know, girls come here absolutely did that. Do you think, or would you tell us a little bit about your family's history and why education matters? And I still say that in the present tense to the Sims.
Sure. You know, my family has been involved in politics, medicine, law, education for generations. My family came to New Mexico in the early 1900s because of tuberculosis and settled here to recuperate from that and established roots. And when my granddaddy and his brother and sister were born, it became very clear that education was lacking in New Mexico. And it wasn't that it was lacking, you know, oh, it's just horrible, but there needed to be more options. So as my grandparents met in, you know, the early 30s and then went away to school and came back, they realized when they settled here after my granddaddy finished medical school in New York, and they started raising their own family, that there needed to be better options, more options. And they knew, because of having been able to go to schools on the East Coast, what really great quality education looked like. And they wanted that same opportunity for kids in New Mexico because this is where their roots were. This is where the families were going to be and where the families have been. And so the dedication to doing something to improve education was what my family decided they really wanted to do. And I have been and am still the only Barbara and Albert Sims grandchild that has gone to all three schools that my family has helped start and grow, I guess you would say, and Monzano Prep and Academy. And I think that my family wants to see everybody have the opportunity. Yeah. And I know we're all a little bit familiar anyway with the endowment and everything. And the biggest goal was how can we provide a school or schools that can educate kids in New Mexico to be able to stand up against kids in New York or Washington or on the West Coast or anywhere and say this education is as good, maybe even better than a lot of those.
Well, I concur with that. The one thing that also really struck me and having been part of like founding a school and doing that, is how the Sims family, and it seems to be historically this way, stayed out of the school business. They provided the resources, a vision, but did not interfere with the operations of school.
Right.
That is really uncommon. I don't think people understand that really, especially when you're putting your dollars into that.
True.
Do you want to just speak to that, or have you talked about that as a family, or is that just the way it was?
You know, I genuinely don't have an answer for that. And I think being the grandchild, a lot of the stories were more about, it's our little school, or, isn't Ashby doing a great job? Didn't Bob, do fantastic things? And knowing my grandparents, they would want to say that as long as the right people were in the right place, it was going to be well taken care of. And they didn't need to be a part of that.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your grandparents. I get this question myself. I have a grandfather that is well known, but at the dinner table, he was just Pop.
Yes.
And I had a very close relationship with him. And, I still find it strange that people send me YouTube clips and other things that have been in that way. But tell us about, family life a little bit. What holidays were like, Sunday dinners, what was it like? What was it like growing up Sims?
Of course, from the inside out, I didn't know how special it was. As a grown woman and a mother, I know now how extraordinary my life was. But it was just, it was what it was. And my grandparents were some of the most unique, loving, wonderful people I genuinely have ever met. Truly, honestly. And for me growing up, I think that I had a very unique and special relationship with my grandparents because my mom ended up being a single mom after a couple years of marriage. And my grandparents had the opportunity to pick me up from school when my mom needed them to. And I used to always get to go to what's now everybody knows Los Poblanos, but that was where I got to grow up. I'd go with Bobby and Papa, Barbara and Albert. They're Bobby and Papa forever. But I'd go with Bobby and Papa and spend the afternoon making cookies, or my granddaddy would take me fishing up at the ranch. And, they used to always joke when I think it was probably while I was here, they would say, well, you're our sixth child, because they have their 5 children. And I was the first granddaughter born, not the first grandchild born. Right. My cousin Jessie was the first. But being my granddaddy's little girl, it was super, super special. And I think the opportunities that they gave me were just wholly unique, because I would go to museum board meetings and, gallery openings and all different kinds of medical functions, or, whatever it may be. But it was just normal. That was just life. And looking back on it, so much of that shaped how I have tried to parent my 2 boys and give them the same kind of opportunities of experiencing different things like that. But it was truly just such an amazing thing, because they are the kind of people that everybody wishes they could know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you said that there was a need, it didn't matter if the need was a pair of shoes or library or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was, they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to help
Mm-hmm.
get that done. And my granddaddy loved to tell the stories when he was practicing medicine that, and he called me Fran Dan, and he would say, Fran Dan, there was this one time that, this old farmer came in and he had appendicitis, and I had to operate and take his appendix out. And you know how he paid me? I said, no, Papa. And he said, he brought me a pig.
Right.
But he wanted to help the person.
Mm-hmm.
And if that meant he was taking a pig as payment, he was happy to do that. That's just the kind of people that they were. And Carlos, was so great. Carlos Garcia, when he spoke at the alumni dinner,
Powerful.
he said every time he saw my granddaddy would always say, how's our school?
Right.
How's our little school? And he was ecstatic to have the conversations and impart any kind of wisdom that he could. Super, super special.
Yeah. So share a little bit about your life after the academy. You are an alum.
Yes, ma'am.
And stand on your own feet. Yes, you have a legacy. I really do understand that. And then you're like, I'm also my own woman.
Sure.
About, college, afterlife, after college, and know you have a ranch.
Yes.
And are a proud rancher. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Of course. So post-academy life.
Yes, post-academy life.
I went right from the academy to Sweetbriar College in Virginia and loved every second of that, but did not take college seriously. And unfortunately took my horse with me, because that was my life as a teenage girl, was horse showing and anything equestrian. And I have a fun little anecdote to share about that maybe later, as far as my time at the academy went.
Don't worry. We'll get to some of that.
But realized that I needed to grow up, and probably should have taken a gap year, because I was very young. I graduated when I was 17. And back then, it wasn't so unheard of, but I was young. I was truly young, and probably should have stayed home for a year and then went on to school. But anyway, hindsight, right? And went away to college, came back, and decided that I probably needed to have a job for a little while.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those kind of perfect situations where I started working as a teaching assistant at Monsanto in kindergarten classroom. Started nannying for the Yates family.
Yeah.
And taking classes at UNM. And so spent a few years doing that, and met and married my ex. That's life, right?
I thought you were going to say a great guy.
I know. My ex. He did the greatest thing for me, because he gave me my firstborn son. And JT actually was accepted to the academy for 6th grade. But I had met my now husband, Harry. And so JT didn't have the opportunity to come here. But anyway, in between all of that, unfortunately a divorce, but then finding my person.
Yeah.
We all talk about back in the day, our soulmates and everything like that. But I think in today's terms, we say our person.
Right.
And Harry Lee is exactly that for me. And my best friend growing up also went to the academy, married an alum of the academy, Sonnet McKinnon.
Yeah.
Sonnet and I have known each other since 5th grade, and I actually introduced her to Ian. And apparently, Sonnet told me on my wedding day, when I was marrying Harry, that when we were little girls, I said that I always wanted to marry a rancher and a cowboy. And she said to me in the toast at my wedding to Harry, Francie, cheers, because you did what you said you were going to do when we were little girls. You found your rancher. So it was the coolest thing. But, good people.
I was going to marry a New York Yankee. I think I lost my window here.
It could happen. It could happen.
Something terribly wrong will have gone for the Yankee. Wow. So you're a rancher.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my husband's family, and, we always talk about how small a community Albuquerque is and New Mexico is. And even though there's lots of people, my husband's family and the Sims family have known each other for truly generations.
Wow.
And my grandmother was interviewed to actually be the nanny and at-home teacher. You have to think about that back in the 30s.
Right.
For my husband's grandparents.
Wow.
And I mean, it just, when Harry and I met, and we met at the state fair, by the way, it's pretty neat. But Harry and I started talking. I was at the will call line picking up my tickets, and he said, "Hey, I'll buy you some Tom Thumb donuts if you'll come to the Copenhagen truck and get me a free thing of Copenhagen." Think cowboys.
Yeah,
in
I
the
get
Western. You get it, right? And
I don't know if all of our listeners will know what Copenhagen. Our listener,
yeah,
will
our
know.
one, oh yeah, our
we'll
one.
know what Copenhagen is.
But that was how we met,
right.
and we started talking and found all of these family connections. And about a week or two after State Fair, he asked me on our first date, and
I love it.
As they say, the rest is history. But his family, my family, is a ranching family too. But what more, I guess, would be known as gentleman ranching. We've got lots of beautiful land that we get to fish on, and every now and again we'll lease some grazing rights out. But we're really about going up and doing the fishing. Whereas the Lee family is 4th generation now of a true ranching family. And they started out with sheep. And my husband always says, we ran sheep, but beef, cattle to be respectable. So
I got it. You're actually the perfect person to ask this question. So historically, the academy had never had horses or equestrian.
Right.
And you would think culturally it would, and regionally it would.
Yes.
Where that was commonplace on these East Coast schools, really until they just couldn't afford it anymore. So why do you think that wasn't the case here? We had the land. We had everything.
Right. I begged for it. Genuinely in the 80s, a little equestrian me, begged for it because there was a good handful of us that did the hunter jumper, that did the Western and everything. And the standard answer was the liability. And I think that maybe at some point that probably could have been handled. But I think that truly education, as far as the traditional sense, was so much more important. The sports, the arts, and the genuine core of educating kids. And the tidbit, this ties in so perfectly. I remember my sophomore year, I was saying, okay, I've got this horse show, that horse show, and I need to be excused so that I can go. This is a sport. Oh no, we can't excuse you. That's not a sport. And I said, what can I do to prove to you that it's a sport? And I had to do the presidential physical fitness test.
Right.
I had to, do the mile, the sit-ups, the push-ups, I had to do the swim, because at the time you had to swim as a part of that. And I passed with flying colors. And coach came up and said to me, well, I'm stunned. I didn't think that you would be able to do it. And you actually had better scores with your whatever it was at the time than some of the soccer players did. And I said, exactly. So now may I please be excused for the horse shows. And I joked and I said, you do know that it is an actual Olympic sport.
Right.
It is in the Olympics. Well.
Right.
So that's my fun little tidbit.
I love it. Do you have any other, do you have any memories or stories from your time at the academy that, when you get together with your classmates, these are the things that you talk about?
Genuinely, as far as stories go, when I look back at my time at the academy, I think back and say, there is not a better education that I could have received anywhere in the United States. Period.
Yeah.
And it has carried me through, for everything that I do and where I am today. And, my husband still jokes and teases and says, I got the nickel words and you got the $500 words. And we always joke about that. But when I think back about friends and time at the academy, so much of what I think about is shaped by the amazing teachers that I had. And I think back to a lot of, these iconic teachers. You were talking about Don Smith, Smitty, and Bucky.
Yeah.
And, Walt Daub and, Mr. Buchanan and Vince Cordova and Bruce Musgrave.
Yeah.
Just all of these people. But I think probably the most important thing that I personally take away was that every teacher held me accountable for my own education. And, they said, you may be a Sims.
Right.
And that's a great thing to be.
Right.
But you have to own your education. And I sure didn't make it easy. My mom loves to tell horror stories about, me waiting until the night before a 5 or a 10-page paper was due and just crying because I'm trying to type it out and all of the things. But going through the academy, you build friends and relationships that are truly generational. Talking about Sonnet and Ian McKinnon, I'm godmother of their daughter and they're godparents of my 2 boys. And what the academy allows you to do is build those kinds of relationships that last lifetimes. And once you get out of here and start looking back at, like what Carlos was saying, driving maybe a little bit over the speed limit on the dirt roads around
Right,
campus
right.
and things like that. It is amazing because not many other schools afford you those kind of opportunities.
Right.
And I think that it's such an amazing gift for any child that walks onto this campus and is lucky enough to be educated here.
So, Francie, you've been privy to much of the first 70 years, the last 50 years or 40 years. In your heart, what would you like to see for the next 70?
That the Academy continues. You know, I think that over the years, there has been, talk about selling some of the land off, talk about, how strong the endowment is, talk about, the sustainability of the school. And, my granddaddy talking about looking forward. He asked me years ago, prior to, him and his health truly declining, he said, Fran Dan, I need you to be at our school, and I need you to go to graduation and represent us and do what you can. And of course I said, of course I will. Obviously. But his big concern, and one of the things that we've talked about, is just making sure that the school can continue, that the legacy is that it doesn't stop. And I think that looking forward 50 years, looking forward 70 years, is the hope is that the Academy is financially stable enough to continue, because it's a huge gift to educate children the way the Academy does. A huge gift. And I don't mean because of what the family was able to do for it, but the practical side of it. You know, it is so impactful.
Right.
Look at the distinguished alums that have been, even just in your time here, these last 5 going on 6 years. It's pretty astounding to look at what they have accomplished and that they start here.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I will say, we're financially very strong right now. And I think where we need to continue is to not take our foot off the gas. And it's hard or it can be when you're in those bigger cities and there's a lot more competition and there's all of this, and that we are constantly also competing against ourselves and that, and being relentless at getting better. And what I have come to really understand is the Academy is more than a school to this city. I mean, it in reality is an economic driver. People move here because they can send their kids to the Academy. I'm happy that we're able to increase our enrollment. We're just shy of 1,200 kids, where for many years it was, sat about 900. I'm like, no. The more children who have access to this, the better. And let's create systems that open the doors to kids on this. And where I still feel we have great accessibility because of tuition assistance, because of how we handle our finances, it is the affordability part that I get concerned about with Albuquerque. And And, there are some problems that are beyond my control in this, birth rates of the city, other things like that. Even though I think I can solve most problems, I can't. But going after, the debt of the school, doing that, which we are actively, taking care of, that will ensure that sustainability for that. And being unafraid about talking about it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know a lot of the former board members and current board members, and I think that protecting the endowment is something that is absolutely critical to going forward. This is not anything that people in private schools don't already know. I mean, this is yes, Francie, we know, Francie, but I think that knowing that and being able to do that, critical. And I think that knowing that students can come to the academy and get the tuition assistance, and knowing, if we're going to talk numbers and things like that, we all know how expensive it is to educate children today. Yeah. I'm on a school board, a public school board in my home county, Cibola, and it has been absolutely eye-opening to look at what educating one child costs, let alone 1,200 at this level. And that is key. And what an amazing, amazing job the Academy is doing for that.
I always have the greatest respect for public education. They have the greatest mission. They educate everybody. There's no test or this or wiki, and at the same time, I wish every kid got what they can get here.
Yes.
And it's not from a lack of effort or knowledge. It's just resources.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's not that we're better. It's just that we're equipped differently.
Yes.
And it is the difference maker. And, the Academy has 8,000 alums. A good number of them don't live in New Mexico anymore. But it is amazing to me how they all consistently attribute where they are to not their college or university, not their grad school, but this school, this little school of yours. So,
my granddaddy would love hearing that. You were asking earlier about that, educating children is something that is just so globally important, and something that my family felt was very important and wanted to do everything that they could and anything that they could to help facilitate that. And that's why we're sitting here today.
Francie, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, a bit of your family history, and the undying support, legacy, and belief in the Academy. It's been just so nice to chat with you today. Okay, it's time for our teacher feature. Today, we're joined by David Gray, an Albuquerque Academy alum for the class of 1998, who returned to the Academy as a faculty member in 2020. David teaches 3 sections of Advanced English 4, 3 genres of literature and film, where students dive into the worlds of Westerns, mystery and crime, and romantic comedy. Welcome, David, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, David, we came at the same time, or at least I, in 2020. Of course, you were an alum. Your dad taught here. So what brought you back?
We moved back during COVID. I was a COVID layoff actually at Northern Arizona University when they slashed a bunch of humanities jobs during COVID, and I had already sort of been thinking that I might be interested in making the switch to high school, and we thought about moving back to Albuquerque, my wife and I, if we ever had a chance. So this opportunity presented it. I mean, it was it was not everything about it was great, but it was
Right. Right.
But it was a chance to move back home, and we had a place where we could stay until we figured out a
Nice.
house to buy. My mom rents a house, and her tenant was just leaving. So I came back to Albuquerque and was exploring, the possibilities of different jobs here. And I think I was applying for a sub position originally at the academy, thinking I would just get my feet wet with
Right.
high school teaching.
But we got our hooks in you
And
right
then,
away.
Yeah, and then immediately I got a call while I was driving the moving truck to Albuquerque. I pulled into a rest station and had a message from Liz Payne saying that they were looking for a full-time position now.
Yeah.
And so,
They being me
You-
and
yeah, yeah.
others. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But were you living in Arizona or you were living in New York at that time?
In Arizona, yeah. So my undergrad was in New York at NYU, but then I moved back to Albuquerque briefly. I moved to the Bay Area and did my master's at San Francisco State. I did my PhD at UC Santa Barbara. And then I had 2 college teaching jobs before coming here. So I was in Bellingham, Washington for a 2-year visiting position, teaching film studies and in an English department there. And then I had been for 3 years in Flagstaff, Arizona, teaching at Northern Arizona University. And I was teaching cinema studies and humanities classes there.
So where did your interest in film start?
It started here in Albuquerque. I mean, my dad would take me they did Buster Keaton films at the Sub Theater at the University of New Mexico on their campus. So I got really into those films. And then in high school, I got really into movies and there was a video store in town named Alphaville that is long gone, but it had artsy foreign films, avant-garde films. And one of the people who worked there is actually the guy who owns the Guild Theater now. So I was also going to these, small theaters around. And then in classes, actually, at the Academy, I was making anytime I had a chance to make a film as a final project for a class, I did that. And that was my senior project, too. I had taken Eastern Thought with Ken Haas here. And myself and 2 other students in that class made a film together for it, and a 20-minute film that was really, I'm sure, very strange and not that good. But we decided to expand it into an hour-long film as our senior project. So we wrote the film, filmed it, edited it, screened it, and then I've never seen it since then. But yeah.
So I would imagine this might be both different and similar. So when I'm a little bit older, but when I loved to record music, I didn't have anything. So I used to just take 2 cassette tapes, put a track down, play that track louder, and then play whatever new instrument on top, and then just kept putting this on. That was my editing.
Yeah.
How did you edit your films?
So editing then, I mean, we were shooting on video,
Right.
And there was a little place called Field and Frame. It was this little video equipment and editing place in Nob Hill off of Central. And we just went in there. He gave us really cheap rate. I mean, we paid for it, but it was really, because we were high school students, he gave us a really, I don't know. We just sort of, the last 2 weeks, I think, of our senior project, we sort of lived in there. And it was not any sort of digital computer editing. It was reel to reel. So you were assembling it, and you couldn't go back and fix something earlier in the sequence, right? So you just had to edit it as you went. But it was really time consuming, but I don't know, it was a fun experience.
Did you continue making films in college and graduate school?
I did undergrad, but then so in undergrad I went to NYU for film production. So that was my plan, and
Right.
I was going to make movies, and I really liked it as a student. I really enjoyed making my own films, working on my friends' films, and sort of had a nice community of students there. And then when I graduated, I sort of tried to make a go of it sort of in the industry in a few ways, but I was less like when I would get on sets that I didn't have any creative involvement in what was happening, and I was just working as a PA or something. That was not as appealing to me.
Right.
I worked for a film distribution company in New York for a short period as well. But at some point I decided I was really more interested in writing about movies, studying movies. It sort of took a while. You know, I had a few years in between
Right.
finishing undergrad and then deciding, I'm going to go to grad school for film studies rather than film production.
And so I could see where it would be like a natural space to then pursue the study of film and the blending of it with literature a bit. How have you found that translated to teaching that kind of course at the academy?
Yeah, it's been, I mean, this is the first year really. Both classes I'm teaching are explicitly sort of have film in in the course description. So I'm really enjoying that. Although I have been, you know,
Right.
when I started, it was just junior English. We didn't have the topics classes yet. And when I was doing that, I was still working a lot of film into my classes and sort of finding ways to get students interested in looking at, and I think it's a natural fit too. And there's something really, you know, I read Mouse here as a student, the
Right.
graphic novel, and was teaching that as well, and sort of getting them to do the kind of visual analysis we do reading that graphic novel, and then also bringing in some documentary footage, documentaries about the Holocaust, right?
Right.
That sort of tie into that. It feels like a natural fit to me,
Yeah.
and it's something, and I'm already, you know, one of the things, it's not what my dissertation was about, but it's always been an interest of mine. And I've taught a class at Western Washington University. I taught a class on the essay film, which is all about a combination of film and literature. It's just like people who make essays, but do it with a camera instead of writing.
Right.
So that's something I've brought, you know, I've done a unit in the nonfiction class that I was teaching the last couple of years. We would do a unit on the essay as form and sort of thinking about what are the different ways that people have thought about the essay, not the 5-paragraph essay, but a sort of more, I don't know, personal, essay in the tradition of Montaigne. And within that, I would also bring in a few essay films and a couple readings on the essay film. And then students at the end of that unit could decide, I want to write an essay that's sort of drawing from the lessons that we've done, or I want to write a more conventional essay that's just analyzing some of the essays that we've looked at, or I'm going to make an essay film and, you know, take my own stab at this form. And there's definitely not all students take that option, but the ones who do have gotten really into it. And I think I'm really excited about the ways I just sort of get to naturally bring film into my classes. And I think it's, students have been into it so far, I think.
You know, I teach world religions, and using art, film, literature, in addition, of course, to sacred text. I mean, it just, you know, that it's religion is embedded in culture. Like, you can't separate it out. And then when they see this in these different genres, it just has like, it's like an eye-opening experience to them, especially when they have like the visual vocabulary to like be able to pick something up, or understand the artistry behind film or paintings or what have you. And it's not just how it makes you feel, but what are these other things that are happening in there. So I think it's great. And so have you taught films in which the films influenced literature, or is it always literature that gave rise to film, or are they really standalone?
I have tended to sort of, well, I guess I see it working all three ways potentially. I think I've tended to teach them a little bit more separately, although I will be doing some examples where, and I have done, when we read Shakespeare, we watch a film version of it or something like that. But then right now we're doing, in that 3 genres class that you mentioned, we're doing the mystery or the detective story is sort of the first genre we've looked at. And we've read a couple examples of the sort of hard-boiled detective stories that people like Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett were writing in the 1920s and 30s. And then we've just been looking at film noir, which sort of draws from, and often those films are adaptations of those stories, but the films do something different with it as well. And it absolutely bleeds back into the literature. And there are, a lot of the writers who were writing hard-boiled novels were also making a living as Hollywood screenwriters or trying to. And so there's all sorts of flow back and forth, I feel like.
So like going back a bit, can you just share some memories of your dad teaching here before you even got here?
Yeah.
I mean, was the academy just always in the water in the Gray household?
Yeah, definitely. So we moved here for my dad to take the job, and I think it was 1985. So when I started kindergarten in Albuquerque, so we moved here from Seattle, and definitely some of my earliest memories are sort of linked to the school. I remember like going to a holiday party in the East Campus dining hall where probably some faculty member was Santa Claus. I don't remember who. But yeah, and going on, I went at least once on the 9th grade ex-ed trip, which was going to Philmont at the time. My dad would sometimes lead groups, and so I went with him on a 5-day backpacking trip with a bunch of 9th graders who seemed, who seemed like very impossibly old to me. Like, I don't, I was in elementary school. I don't remember what year, but so yeah, I was coming here. I went to summer camp here too before being a student. And
can you share some a thought or memory of your time here as a student, classes that you enjoyed, friendships, stories, things that you were exposed to that changed you a little bit?
Yeah, I would say, the teachers I had here were really important to me. Since I'm an English teacher, maybe I'll start with English. But Stephanie Lipkowitz I had in 9th grade, and she was a fantastic teacher. But I had Cindy Moore as a junior. I had Kevin Hall as a senior. He was great. So the teachers were always fantastic. I had a lot of my Spanish teachers I remember. I have really strong memories of Cristina Quiroga, who was a really hard teacher, but really good teacher. Also Martha Mensch, I feel like was sort of similar. Brent Doss I had as a student as well. And I always remember his laugh. There were times where the students would get him laughing, and he just couldn't stop laughing.
Right.
So yeah, the teachers I had here are sort of what I remember most. And then friends too. I have 2 of my closest friends are people still are people I graduated with here. And
so, do you feel the way that you teach and at the academy was informed by the academy, or is it really informed later on through graduate work and, when you got your dissertation? Or the approaches that are used today?
Yeah, I think it's definitely I don't know that I could point exactly to what pieces of it are from where, but I think it's absolutely influenced by the teachers I had here and just the way I felt in the classroom here. And also I think I wasn't, as a high schooler, I wasn't necessarily like comfortable in my own skin yet. And so I think also just thinking about looking for students who maybe are feeling the same way,
Right.
or I don't know. They're so it's definitely I've drawn from all parts of my education, but for sure I think some of it goes back to being a student here.
So you've been at the academy really since you were about 5, with some times away, some time away. Can you think of ways that it has remained the same, and in other ways how it has changed or evolved?
When I came back here after teaching in college, and even though it was that terrible year and we were teaching on Zoom and everything was not great about that
it wasn't. Trust me.
Situation.
I'm with you.
But I still think I was immediately struck that I was having really great conversations with students, and that there was just something about the just the intellectual environment that produces great conversations in class. And that's been the thing I've been happiest about coming back here, is that I feel like I don't feel like I feel like in some ways the conversations here are better than they were in some of my like freshman college classes, and that they sometimes go to deeper and more interesting places. So that's the thing that feels like, I feel like that was the case when I was a student too.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, there's this little thing. Okay, this is a part of our show that we call lightning round. So I'll give you a pair.
Okay.
And you just choose
one of the other.
You ready? Red or green?
Christmas.
Okay.
I like green probably a little more, but I always order Christmas. So
are you an early bird or a night owl?
Night owl.
You prefer literature or film?
Both.
What's your favorite spot on campus?
This Laura Mater told me about this last year, and it was when we were both had kids here for the summer camp, and we'd run each other. And she said the great place to read is that little spot that's like on your way down from the field towards the science building. There's like a little bench and a grove of trees, and so. That's my new favorite spot on campus. Although I did get a lot of bug bites when I went there.
Well, maybe
mosquitoes were active, but
maybe
it's such a I don't know, it feels like you're sort of by yourself.
Right.
In that little spot.
Well, David, thank you so much for talking to me, and thank you for being such a fabulous colleague. I know it was not easy to come here in 2020, but I'm just so happy you stayed. And I hope that your kids will, be the next generation up.
Yeah, no, it's great to see Felix he's on my same side of the campus now. He's in 8th grade now,
right.
So it's fun to have him around.
That is just great. I want to thank Francie Lee for helping me explore the topic of the Sims legacy, as well as to my good friend and colleague, David Gray. I'm very fortunate to be part of a team that cares so deeply about education. Go Chargers! Thanks for listening to What I Learned in School to learn a little bit about Albuquerque Academy. Send us your comments and questions to headofschool@aa.edu. You can listen to all of our episodes on our website at aa.edu and wherever you get your podcasts.